Good morning to you, good morning, how are you? Welcome to Sunday View, a glorious morning it is in South Manchester. Sounds like I've been saying that a lot recently. It's beautiful out there. I think it's right across the UK. The weather is fabulous today and will continue as such for the next week or two. Hope you've had a good weekend so far and you're in good form. Sunday View, of course, is where I'll be looking at the front pages of the UK Sunday tabloids and broadsheets, and we'll look closely at one or two stories inside as well. It's been a bonanza of stuff this morning as I sat down to prepare the programme. There's a lot in the papers as we approach the silly season. That's not always the case in the summer, but loads to talk about. As usual, please tweet me with your comments to @Richie Allen Show. Lovely to be with you.
Asking the questions mainstream journalists will never ask. This is your Richie Allen Show on richieallen.co.uk, Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, and triggerwarning.tv.
Yeah, you might not be with me because of the weather, or maybe you've taken me with you on your device. Sunday View, Fab Radio 2, triggerwarning.tv, TuneIn Radio, and richieallen.co.uk.
It's the Richie Allen Show, broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Yes, indeed. I'm going to jump right in because I think we might struggle to get it all in the hour, and I don't like that. I don't like leaving stuff out, so I'm going to jump in. A hot one, as I said, hot all this coming week. Lovely afternoon yesterday. Went to a house party in Chorlton, met some lovely people. It was nice to be sitting in a garden in the sunshine, sipping a nice cool glass of rosé, and my pinky finger was stuck out as well. You gotta do that. The old pinky finger. Can't drink wine without the old pinky going out. Lovely, lovely stuff. Right, big day for Saudi Arabian women. Big day for Saudi Arabian ladies. Since midnight, women have been legal drivers. They've had the right to drive since midnight in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. A decades-old ban has been lifted, and the ladies can now get behind the wheel of a car without the religious stormtroopers beating the living shit out of them. Lisa Holland from Sky News went out to Riyadh, which is the capital of Saudi Arabia. I had to look it up. And met with Rima. And Rima is now legally driving, and well, she's just tickety-boo. Lisa Holland reporting for Sky.
Yeah, good morning from the Saudi capital, Riyadh. Truly an historic day here where women can make their own decisions about whether or not they want to drive themselves, their family around. I'm with Rima this morning. She's one of those who've got their licence. A good day here, Rima?
Good day, great day. Thank you so much.
Exciting day. I mean, actually, Rima was telling me we're going to go for a spin with her now, and she was just telling me a few minutes ago that normally she'd be taking the driver and her brother would be taking this car to go out and about. But today, Rima is in the incredible position that she can drive, and your brother's actually taking the driver. So let's go for it, Rima. So Sunday morning, obviously it's a busy working day here, and you're an analyst. Mm-hmm. What does it mean to you to be able to just pull out? It's something that obviously the women in the rest of the world, we take for granted, to be able to make our choices, go where we want, when we want, drive a car. How does it feel to just be pulling out and be able to go around Riyadh like this?
Go on.
Honestly, I'm so happy with this decision. It's an amazing experience. I experienced it last night. We went for a drive around 12 a.m. And today in the morning, you can see how people are very happy. They're very supportive. We can see how the streets are, everyone is so happy. You can feel the vibe.
This is a lie now. I watched the report. There's nobody on the streets, and nobody is lining the footpaths to watch the ladies drive by and cheering them on. There's none of that going on. It's interesting propaganda, this. Have a listen to a bit more.
Are you kind of worried, though, that there might be criticism in some parts from men, that not all the men in this society are going to adapt to this modernisation? It's quite something. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, the men don't give a shite because they're down at the beheading at Riyadh Football Stadium. There's a couple of beheadings today. They're not too bothered about the driving.
30 years, women have campaigned here for the right to be able to drive.
I mean, honestly, when I first got my license and when we first saw all this driving woman thing, all I saw was positive people encouraging us to drive and giving us all the support. So even if there are some that are not, happy with it, but I believe that the support we got is a lot more than the criticism.
You kind of trailed off there a bit, Rima. Rima was carefully selected by the Saudis, no doubt, to do the Sky News piece. Shameless propaganda by Sky News on behalf of the Saudi royals. Sky has no shame. While they're riding along with Rima, let's not even get into the health and safety implications of it, by the way. And I'm not a Jobsworth or a no-mark, but this Lisa Holland had a camera and a microphone stuck in her face while she was driving down the highway. I mean, come on, right? But while they're riding along with Rima, some poor bastard is having his head lopped off around the corner. For adultery, probably, or something. Or some woman is being battered to bejesus by some guy with a cat of nine tails because she was accused of adultery. And I could say that, a couple of 100 miles away, they're killing thousands of Yemenis as well. Rubbish that by Sky. What a propaganda windfall that is for the Saudi Royal Kingdom. Anyway, leaving that one alone. In the Sunday Independent, I'm doing the show back asswards this morning. I will get to the front pages in a minute. In the Sunday Independent this morning, Jeremy Corbyn is in Jordan now. He's the leader of the Labour Party. And while in Jordan, Jezza said that the United Kingdom would swiftly recognise Palestine as a state under a Labour government. So if he becomes Prime Minister, he said we will move very quickly to recognise Palestine as a state. He said he would take steps towards a genuine two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict very early on if Labour wins that general election. It's not a conflict. Why does Corbyn call it a conflict? It's no more a conflict than if the heavyweight champion of the world was to fight the featherweight champion of the world and you tied one of the featherweight's hands behind his back. That wouldn't be a conflict. It would be a slaughter. It's not a conflict. Corbyn has really been beaten down by the Jewish lobby, hasn't he? Very careful about what he says these days. Well, he's been in Jordan anyway, which has got its own human rights horrendous record, really. I don't know if he said anything about that when he was there. And he visited an old camp for Palestinians who were basically kicked out during the what the Palestinians call, well, we go back to 1948. I'm not going to get into all of that now, but he was visiting a refugee camp and he said this did Corbyn. He attacked Western silence in April, according to The Independent, over Israel's killing of Palestinian protesters on the Gaza border. Did he really? Was Corbyn especially vocal back in April while the Israeli snipers were taking pot shots at children? I don't remember Corbyn saying that much. Anyway, 8 minutes past the hour. It's good enough, I suppose, that he's called for Palestine to be officially recognised. Let's look at the Mail on Sunday. The headline screaming out is "Give me £20 billion or I'll bring you down." Who said that? Well, allegedly, Defence Secretary Gavin Williamson said it. And the Mail on Sunday reports that he has threatened to break Theresa May's government if his department doesn't get £20 billion over the next 10 years. Now, the Mail said it has, or says today that it has information that in a discussion with service chiefs, that's military service chiefs, Williamson is reported to have said he will crush the Treasury over this issue. And also allegedly said of Theresa May, "I made her and I can break her," because Williamson ran her leadership campaign back in 2016. That's the Mail on Sunday. The Sunday Times, now this is a big story, and if this broke last week, I didn't do a lot on this because there wasn't anything I could do on it, really. We'll talk a little bit about it. The Sunday Times, the great NHS cover-up, opiate syringes may have killed thousands. That's the headline. The great NHS cover-up, opiate syringes may have killed thousands. So the Sunday Times says that syringe pumps used to administer powerful painkillers by the NHS for at least 30 years could have contributed to the premature death of thousands of elderly patients. A whistleblower involved in the inquiry into more than 450 deaths at Gosport Memorial Hospital said the panel ignored evidence of fatalities caused by the devices because they feared a national scandal. More than 450 patients died, having been given powerful painkillers inappropriately at this War Memorial Hospital in Gosport. That's what the report has found. The independent panel said, taking into account missing records, it might have been 200 patients more. Could be over 600 maybe. There was a disregard for human life, said the report, between 1989 and the year 2000. Now, Dr. Jane Barton has been blamed for this. The report said she oversaw the practice of prescribing on the wards, and it was said that there was an institutionalised regime of prescribing and administering dangerous amounts of medication which wasn't clinically justified at the Hampshire Hospital. So what about the Sunday Times central allegation this morning that these opiate syringes, these pumps, and these pumps are basically things that are set on timers so that nurses and doctors don't have to come in and administer the drugs every single time. So, thousands may have been killed, says the Sunday Times. Let's have a listen to Camilla Tominey. She's a political editor with the Sunday Express, and she was on the Andrew Marr show today. What about this claim that thousands may have been killed in the meantime?
So, the Gosport report obviously came out listing categoric and awful failures with regard to a number of people dying. The Sunday Times has now spoken to a whistleblower who is suggesting that there is a problem with the syringes that were used at that hospital and could have been used at others up until, I believe, 2015. Now, there are two types of syringes that disperse into the body opiates like diamorphine.
And to be absolutely clear, this is so that nurses and doctors don't have to come in hour after hour giving little injections. They just they pump the stuff into the body.
Time saving, and so anyone who's had a relative or been in hospital is familiar with having a cannula in and having it fixed to a syringe that slowly pumps out the correct amount of drugs. Now, concerns were raised internally some years ago that two syringes, one which pumped drugs very slowly and one which pumped a great amount of drugs very quickly, were easily confused. So much so that some hospitals took their own action and put fluorescent stickers on different syringes to make sure there was no confusion. Now, we all know how busy and sometimes understaffed emergency wards are. Staff could have been overtired, confused, under pressure and mixed up syringes. Now, the report itself dismissed any concerns about the syringes, saying this isn't something that's on our radar, this isn't something that we think is significant. However, Jane Barton, the doctor at the centre of this whole scandal, was asked repeatedly in her police investigation about the syringes and her use of them.
No comment.
But it means that it was on the police's radar at the time, and the whistleblower is suggesting the reason why the syringes didn't form a major part of that Gosport investigation is because it could obviously open the floodgates to a massive NHS cover-up.
And if people are thinking this sounds a little bit obscure, a little bit detailed, we should refer to the Sunday Times front page headline, which says that this might have killed thousands of people up and down the country. There are 40,000 of these syringes being used now inside the NHS. And if it's true, then this is the biggest NHS cover-up ever, possibly.
What's interesting in the coverage as well is the suggestion that countries like New Zealand and Australia banned use of the syringes in the noughties. The NHS said, we really need to phase these out, and invited hospitals to stop using them, I think, in 2010 for a period of 5 years. But there wasn't an official recall. So, yes, there is a suggestion they're still in operation, and actually the NHS uses these syringes more than any other health service in the world.
It's a really big story I'll talk to Jeremy Hunt about, obviously, later on.
He does. Well, we can hear what Jeremy Hunt said right now because I recorded it. That's scandalous that if other countries had discontinued the use of these syringe pumps back in the noughties, and if the NHS said, or if there was a recommendation to the NHS back in 2010 to stop using these things because they could be faulty and could overdose and kill people, how is it that potentially in 2018 many hospitals are using these and thousands of them could still be in operation? What did Jeremy Hunt, the Health Secretary, say when this was put to him by Andrew Marr this morning?
Well, the first thing is that the Sunday Times story says that there is some kind of a cover-up, and I think we should take the word of Bishop James Jones and the panel who did the Gosport inquiry. I mean, this is the man who took on the British establishment with the huge work he did over Hillsborough, and he's absolutely clear that he has looked at everything he wants to look at, and there's absolutely no question of him being constrained in his inquiry. But that is not the same as an issue of dangerous syringes, which have been in use across the world. The NHS sent out instructions in 2010.
Australia's banned them, New Zealand have banned them, we're still using 40,000 of them. Does this need another inquiry, another look at these syringes?
Well, do you fucking think, Andrew? What? I mean, if you had a grandparent or a senior mum or dad in hospital now, and they had maybe a very serious condition, wouldn't you be rushing to the hospital to find out what the hell is going on? Do we need another inquiry, says Marr? No! You need to issue a directive immediately to every hospital in the country. You can't use these anymore. And in the meantime, like it or lump it, the nurses on duty and the doctors are going to have to do it each time. It's unbelievable, isn't it? Oh, we have an inquiry. No, there's people in hospital now. Right.
Syringes.
Well, the information I have is that these particular syringes were taken out of service in 2015, but of course we will look very, very carefully at this story and indeed look at whether the NHS did react quickly enough when we first found out about the safety consequences of these syringes.
Vague and non-committal. Marr should have jumped in there and said, well, it appears the information that you had about them being discontinued in 2015 is a load of bollocks, with respect, Health Secretary. Why aren't you on the phone now to every hospital in the country? If you have these things, get rid of them, don't use them. Madness. 17 minutes past the hour. We do live in a lunatic asylum. It's not a throwaway line for effect. It is a lunatic asylum we inhabit. The Observer on Sunday gets even madder at times. The Observer on Sunday, the front page headline is this: UK rabbi in genocide warning to Trump. What's this about? Well, a leading British rabbi, writes The Observer, draws a chilling parallel between Donald Trump's policies on immigration, which have seen thousands of children separated from their parents on the US border with Mexico, and historical trends that have led to genocide, as pressure grows on Theresa May to denounce the US president's approach on his UK visit this month. So basically a British rabbi has said that what Trump is doing, well, it ultimately leads to genocide. Now, I have no time for Donald Trump or any politician. I've got to say that every now and then. But didn't Trump say that there wouldn't be any longer, there would be no continuation of the policy where families are separated? At least that's what I understand. This happened last week. Anyway, okay. So who is this rabbi? Well, her name is Laura Janner Klausner, and she's the senior rabbi of Reform Judaism, which is a progressive section of the Jewish community, allegedly. She's not the only one. Church leaders, politicians, they're all jumping on the bandwagon, condemning the US government's approach to immigrants, migrants coming in its southern border. So the rabbi, Laura Janner Klausner, told The Observer that the warning signs were clear. Political leaders had to act now to prevent the kind of decline in respect for fellow human beings that became commonplace before some of the worst atrocities in history. That might be true if you look at it from a certain perspective. But Laura Janner Klausner, the Jewish rabbi, is a monumental hypocrite and should keep her mouth firmly shut. Where was Laura Janner Klausner earlier this year when the Israeli government ordered nearly 40,000 African migrants to fuck off out of Israel? And asylum seekers, get out, take $3,000 and return to your homes or we'll put you in prison. Do you remember that? At the time, the Israeli government, many of these migrants had lived in Israel for more than 6 years. Many of them working, many of them paying taxes, many of them educated in Israeli schools. Entitled to refugee status and maybe entitled to citizenship. But the lunatic Netanyahu and the hardliners in Israel called them infiltrators, said they were a burden on society and threatened the Jewish character of the nation and wanted them out. The hateful Zionist state of Israel. Where was this rabbi then? You want to have a go at Donald Trump and his policies towards child migration? Have a look a little bit closer to home. Rabbi, I would have said. She's not the only one though. Nick Baines, the Bishop of Leeds, said the US president's approach to immigration had to be challenged, and so on, so on, so on. That's in the Sunday Observer. What's in the Sunday Telegraph? 21 minutes past the hour. Headline on the front page of the Telegraph is war spirit needed to fix housing shortage. There is a massive shortage of affordable housing in this country, and there is not only a dearth or a deluge, not a deluge, we need a deluge. There is a dearth of homes for low-income families to rent from the state. They are virtually gone. So Oliver Letwin, is it Oliver Letwin? It is. It's Oliver Letwin, Conservative MP in the Telegraph today, is saying that we need to treat the housing issue the way we treated the building of Spitfires in the Second World War. We need to treat it as an emergency and start building homes immediately. Because if we do, not only will we have homes for people to rent that they can afford, but also, of course, it will be a huge boon to the economy because you'll have tens of thousands of people in work building those houses. How many times have we said this on this programme? 22 minutes past the hour. Just before we look at the Sunday Express, we're going to take a wee break. This is the Richie Allen Show, Sunday View, for Sunday, June 24th, 2018. I'll be back with you in 90 seconds.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS, and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
There's a place high in the mountains of Spain, a sanctuary where souls gather from all around the globe to learn about themselves and experience powerful changes in the way we see our world. They become awakened to their gifts and their power to heal others. Become part of this ever-growing worldwide family of unique, pure energy healing practitioners. Discover how amazing you truly are. Go to www.markbayerski.com. It could just change your life forever.
Introducing the H2O app, a powerful water structuring application that programs vibrational energies into water through the use of different sound frequencies. Once programmed, the use of water for drinking, cooking, bathing. Give it to your friends and colleagues or spread it around the garden. The list goes on. It's not just water that the app can be used for either. It's great for programming crystals too. The H2O app is free to download and is available on both Android and Apple platforms. For further information, go to h2oapp.online.
Welcome back to the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. It's your Richie Allen Show.
And a very good morning to Harvey Wood. Good morning, Harvey. Your daughter Jo Wood is thinking of you today. Sent me a tweet saying, say hello to Harvey. Thanks for listening, Harvey, mate. I hope you're well. I hope you're enjoying the sunshine. And you might be looking forward to the England game at lunchtime. We're in the middle of the World Cup, of course, which the Russians are doing a fantastic job of putting on. I know a lot of people, of course, because of my many years in the media, and there are journalists whom I know who are based in Russia. I also know one or two supporters group leaders who are based in Russia, and the word coming out of Russia is the organisation of the World Cup is magnificent, the venues are fantastic, the Russian people are great, the hospitality is wonderful, and importantly, security is very, very good. And I'm not talking about terrorism now. I'm talking about violence from idiotic football fans every country has its idiotic football fans, but apparently the Russians are doing an absolute sterling job of putting on that World Cup. More power to the Russians, I say, in this era of Russian bashing. Right, shall we look at the front page of the Sunday Express, dear listener? Right, little bit of Brexit. Don't panic. I kept my promises. I've watered down the Brexit coverage. Little bit of Brexit on the front page of the Sunday Express. Mentioned Camilla Tominey earlier on. Good journalist, good writer is Camilla. Sunday Express spends a lot of time talking about the weather, don't you know? And Princess Diana. But it sometimes does good politics, does even good political coverage as well. Sunday Express, front page, no deal, no cash. Simple headline, no deal, no cash. Lord Lawson, who's a strong Brexiteer, Lord Lawson, he's urged Theresa May to hold back this divorce settlement payment to the EU, which is about 40 billion quid, unless they guarantee, the European Union guarantees that it will do a deal favourable to the UK. Of course, he's a leftover from the Thatcher years, and he's among 60 politicians, business officials and economists to suggest that Theresa May needs to get a bit harder in dealing with the European Union. Don't give them any money, said Lord Lawson. Tell them to go and take a running jump until they start playing ball. Good man, Lord Lawson, marvellous. So there was a big march in London yesterday. In London, the Remoaners came out in force. They said 100,000 people. I don't know if that's the case. I can't prove it wasn't. But I can't believe that so many people came out to hear speeches made by people like the fishwife, Gina Miller. I'd rather pull my teeth out with the pliers than listen to Gina Miller for 5 minutes. Anyway, the BBC covered it while seemingly ignoring the fact that there was a large pro-Brexit march at the same time. Thousands marched for People's Vote on Final Deal, says the BBC, with no mention, or hardly any mention, at least not on the website anyway, of the pro-Brexit march. Thousands of people marched demanding a final vote on any UK deal. Now, the comedian Andrew Doyle is unimpressed. He was on Sky News this AM, not too happy with the marchers.
So there was a huge demo in London, 100,000 people, estimates have it, and they're out there protesting against Brexit. Now, I should preface this by saying I think anyone has the right to protest for whatever they want, and they should be able to march and say whatever they want. I'm totally for free expression, even if what they're marching for is basically to thwart democracy. But it's up to them, that's fine. But really, they should, if they wanted to march to sort of extol the values of the EU, maybe a better time to have done that would have been before the referendum in 2016, when they could have still persuaded people of that. It's been done. We had the vote. We had months and months of debate. Everyone had the opportunity to hear all the sides.
They want
and we
another
voted.
vote. They want another vote. The people's vote.
But it's a bit disingenuous, this. So they're sort of saying that they want a vote on the final deal. But then if you look at the placards that are going on at this march, it's not that. They want to stop Brexit. They want to stop it. They want another vote. They want to get us out. They don't believe in democracy. That's really what this is about. I mean, there was one placard I saw which was photographed which had Stop Brexit written on it, and then the X was taken out, that swastika was replaced. So this shows the level of political illiteracy that we're dealing with here, and it's just a joke. And actually, I tell you what bothers me at most is the hypocrisy of it. All these people who claim to be on the left marching in favour of this paternalistic, capitalistic, neoliberal old boy network. It doesn't really work for me, but that's just my view.
Good man, Andrew. Good man. Even less impressed than comedian Andrew Doyle was the UKIP leader Gerard Batten. He spoke with RT and he makes the point that the media chose to ignore the march of the pro-Brexit, pro-get-out-quick lobby, which is equally as big, probably bigger, considering 52% of the electorate that did vote voted to leave back in June 2016. Gerard Batten, UKIP MEP.
I've just come from a march and a rally, of a pro-Brexit march and a rally, which was held outside the BBC and Sky and ITV studios at Millbank, but funnily enough, nobody came out to interview us or filmed it, as far as I know. They're not giving much publicity to the other side of the argument that says we had the referendum, we reached a decision, and now we should have left. And we certainly should be leaving as soon as possible. But Mrs May doesn't really want to leave. She's a Remainer. She leads a government and a majority of the House of Commons who don't want to leave, and they haven't really done very much for 2 years, and they've gone about it in completely the wrong way. Instead of keep asking the European Union how we can leave, they should be telling them, the European Union, how it's going to work. There's no such thing as a hard Brexit or as a soft Brexit. There is leaving the European Union. And if you want to know what that looks like, all you've got to do is to look at every other country in the world that isn't a member of the European Union. It's not complicated. They're trying to make it as complicated as possible.
Yep, shower of bastards, the BBC, to not cover the pro-Brexit mob or crowd or whatever you want to call them that turned up in London as well. 11:30 this Sunday morning, 24th of June 2018. Now, big story today, lots of coverage, not the sort of thing you'd normally expect me to cover, but I want to get into it a little bit because maybe this coming week we will explore it in an interesting way with a couple of guests. Big story today because everybody's leading with this in terms of the television news and radio news programmes. Sweets and fatty snacks sold at checkouts and rolled into supermarket deals will be banned under new government proposals to halve childhood obesity in the UK by 2030. Tighter restrictions on junk food ads on TV and on the internet are planned. Mandatory calorie labelling on restaurant menus is going to be introduced. The Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt said the measures gave power to parents to make healthier choices. So parents will be able to make healthier choices with this information, calorie labelling on restaurant menus. The plans even have been broadly welcomed, allegedly. Sky News covered this today, and I want to get into this for a few minutes. It's very interesting.
Well, thanks for joining us here on Sunrise this morning. We're starting with new government plans to tackle the nationwide childhood obesity crisis. 1 in 3 children are overweight by the time they go to secondary school, and it's an expensive problem. It costs us £27 billion.
Well, the policy launched to reverse that trend is the second in less than 2 years. But now food outlets will be forced to take action, including listing calories on menus and banning the sale of sugary energy drinks to children. There'll also be a crackdown on junk food ads on TV and online. Our correspondent Gerard Tubbs sent this report.
Food and where it comes from is part of the daily curriculum at Charlton Manor Primary School in South London. But the understanding these children have of healthy eating is the exception. 1 in 3 youngsters is now overweight or obese when they start at secondary school. 2 years ago, the government announced a policy to tackle the problem in England, but now seems to be admitting it wasn't good enough. The 2016 Childhood Obesity Plan for Action included a tax on sugary drinks, which was brought in this April, and a voluntary scheme for the food industry to reduce sugar by 1/5. 2 years on, and the government is starting again. Its new plan: ban the sale of energy drinks to children, force food outlets to list calories on menus, and restrict advertising for junk food.
Obviously, the free market capitalists, the libertarians, are absolutely cheesed off about this. They're not being heard today. I've not heard one industry person, somebody who's involved in the mass manufacturing of food, hasn't yet been on television to complain about this, saying that this is basically some sort of fascism where we're being told that we can't do stuff that is actually quite legal. Listen, I have no time for these people. I'm just saying there isn't much balance yet anyway on this. So all these mandatory labellings coming in, you can't sell this, you can't sell that and all the rest of it. Right. So Sky had a nutritionist on, a woman called Pilar Manzanaro. Pilar Manzanaro, that's her name. Have I got that right? Jesus, Richie, hang on a second there now. We don't want to be doing the woman a disservice like. Pilar, yes, Manzanaro, that's right, I was right the first time. And she had this to say about this new plan to tackle obesity in children.
Well, I think it's a great initiative, and you know what I like the best about it is that the government is bringing loads of different players around the table. I mean, the big players, got the retailers, got the industries, got the restaurants, and I think, you know, putting all those resources together is really going to make a difference, especially when, you know, when kids kind of like go into a restaurant, don't really know what to order, but then they look at the menu, they can see a little bit of information, and they can make a much better choice.
See, I think that's the calorie issue is different from all the rest in a way, because if you ban things, then it's big brother. You're taking away a choice. With this, you see, you're not removing choice. You're just providing more information.
And I think that's a great point, because I think the one thing that might be missing from that initiative is putting more resources into educating children, into supporting families to make the right decision when it comes to food. So,
educating children by way of supporting families to make the right decision when it comes to food. What good is that going to do? If you have two parents working every hour in the week to barely make ends meet, to avoid losing their home, and not necessarily their mortgaged home, but to avoid losing the home they are renting. And they can barely afford to buy food for the week. So they have no choice but to buy supermarket deals and go to low-priced supermarkets to buy processed foods. So what good is it telling the children, you know, oh, by the way, kids, your parents are not doing the right thing by you. Your parents are feeding you the wrong foods. What good is that going to do? It's a bit sinister, this, isn't it?
So if you allow them to sort of look at the menu and see how many calories are coming from sugar, how many calories are coming from fat, what the fat is made out of, then they can make a much better decision.
Yeah, so you want to terrorise children, basically. You want children going to restaurants, and these days, sadly, not many children are going to restaurants because their parents can't afford it. But you want to obsess children about calories. You want to get young children obsessed with calories, as if they haven't enough to be worried about, with your enforcing, you know, sex education on them when they're in short trousers, when they're in primary schools. Now you want them looking at every label on every packet, thinking, oh, I'm going to be obese if I eat this and I shouldn't be eating that. Wonderful. What a wonderful idea that is. How about young children can pretty much eat anything so long as they're out kicking a ball, chasing a ball, running around a field, outdoors, and they're not glued to a phone or a tablet. How about that? How about when I was younger, pre-mobile phones and pre-computers and the internet, nobody was obese. Nobody. And I'm not sure the food has dramatically improved. I'm not sure the quality of the food has so dramatically deteriorated. It has. I know it has. I know it has deteriorated. But by how much? We got frozen stuff as well sometimes when I was a kid. But we were outdoors all the time, so nobody was overweight. Imagine that. Imagine enforcing that in schools now. Imagine the madness of getting children in a classroom and getting them into this kind of body-shaming lunacy mindset. You know, you shouldn't be eating this, you shouldn't be eating that. You should look at the calories. You should be looking at this, you should be looking at that. Going to completely fuck children up. And their parents can barely breathe, they're so tired. I know this. My partner and myself, we live like that and we don't have any children. We can barely keep our eyes open during the weekend when we're off. And they want to do this to children now. Right? That's crazy. It's absolutely insane. Did she have anything else to say?
You know, taking that one step further.
All right, hang on a second. I think the presenter, Stephen Dixon, asks an intelligent question here.
What seems to be lacking here is that common sense, not just from children, but from parents as well.
I think that's a very important point as well. It's sort of, you know, giving parents the education and, you know, teaching them how to teach the kids how to use the common sense in order to balance the meals. But what is a balanced meal? I mean, not most people, but a lot of people are not quite clear about that. So if we put resources into that,
is there a cultural problem here in this country, do you think?
I think we've evolved, you know, from having meals cooked at home
together,
and eating together to like, oh my God, I got 10 minutes.
So how has that happened? How have we gone from eating meals together to, oh my God, I've got 10 minutes? It's not a cultural thing. When I lived in Spain, people take their time over their food. They eat a lot of fresh fruit and vegetables, and people live longer and they're less stressed and they're happier. And it used to be said, oh, we could learn a lot from the Spanish. And I'm like, no. There used to be a time in Waterford City in the Republic of Ireland where you bought from the greengrocer, where you bought from your local butcher, where you bought from the fishmonger, and you bought good stuff, quality food, not processed food that's been fucked with before frozen in a freezer. Good stuff. It's not a cultural thing. We're not so far behind in terms of thinking than our, Southern European neighbours. It's that this crazy Agenda 21, Agenda 30 lunatic system that's been imposed on people. They don't have any choice. High streets have been transformed. There are no independent men and women that we used to know now selling vegetables. Yeah, there are one or two boutique places still around. There are, I think, in Chorlton. But in the main, you've got to go to Asda, you've got to go to Lidl, you've got to go to Aldi to buy shit. And you can't help that. So you are stuffing your mouth and your gullet and your digestive system and your body, which is your engine, with shit. And now they're saying they want children to go home and shame their parents. Right? But not only that, we want you looking at every little calorie, kids, because you don't want to be obese. This is crazy. We are the only species on planet Earth that must work for a fellow member of our species to have the right to live, to have the right to breathe in and to breathe out. That's what it is. That's why it's crazy. And that's what globalism has done. Supermarkets, everything frozen, packaged, all sorts of shit injected into it. Right? And that's why people are sick and why they're obese and why people have all these fatigue issues and everything else that goes with it. We haven't even gotten into the other issues with geoengineering and everything else, but that's what it is. Makes me mad. Absolutely mad. We didn't have this when I was a boy, and I'm 43 now, not 70 or 80 or 90. When we were younger, she didn't go to the supermarket and buy everything. She went around to places, and she trusted a greengrocer. And she knew where he got his produce from the farm, which is only a couple of miles down the road. And it wasn't that expensive. You try and buy good food today, good food, that you're getting a guarantee that it's organically farmed and no pesticides. You're paying a fortune. People can't afford to pay it. I know this because I am people. We can't afford to buy from these places. So we do what everybody else does. We pop down to a massive supermarket on a Friday and we put shit into our systems. And the beat goes on. Mad. 18 minutes to the top of the hour. Quick break and then we're going to hear a bit from Jeremy Hunt about the Brexit dividend and whether it will see a windfall for the National Health Service. This is good stuff and it's important too. This is Sunday View. Sorry for the rant there, but this cheeses me off. How dare the government say we're going to start telling children in school to go and tell their parents what to do when their parents cannot do anything about it. Nothing about it. Right, quick break, back in 2.
Introducing the H2O app, a powerful water structuring application that programs vibrational energies into water through the use of different sound frequencies. Once programmed, the use of water for drinking, cooking, bathing. Give it to your friends and colleagues or spread it around the garden. The list goes on. It's not just water that the app can be used for either. It's great for programming crystals too. The H2O app is free to download and is available on both Android and Apple platforms. For further information, go to h2oapp.online.
There's a place high in the mountains of Spain, a sanctuary where souls gather from all around the globe to learn about themselves and experience powerful changes in the way we see our world. They become awakened to their gifts and their power to heal others. Become part of this ever-growing worldwide family of unique, pure energy healing practitioners. Discover how amazing you truly are. Go to www.markbayerski.com. It could just change your life forever. Forever.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS, and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
The Richie Allen Show relies on your support. Go to richieallen.co.uk and set up a monthly donation today.
And welcome back, and thanks for not reading out. I mean, a lot of tweets are coming in, but I did say a bit earlier on, there's so much to get through today. Thanks for that. Lance has tweeted, near his area, there's only 2 micro parks. One is attached to a pub. Between them is 10 acres of field doing nothing. No children. Why not build a great park on there instead of leaving it full of dog shite? Councils don't care. It's easier to tell parents to buy healthy food. Hashtag 1984 says Lance there. David tweets, David Stanford, I've heard this excuse too many times. Fresh or frozen fruit and veg is far cheaper than packaged crap, says David. I disagree, David, but you're entitled to that opinion, of course. It just takes preparation. It's laziness that is the deal, says David. Fair enough, mate. As these are the damned tweets. If we're going to be taxing food, why aren't we taxing console makers and use the consoles and mobile devices? Our children might become more active there. Keep those tweets coming in. Hi to Gojira, who tweets, the attack on sugar is just a way to get aspartame into all the children. You can't find one fizzy juice that isn't made with it now, except Coke, and it is fucked anyway, he says. Or she says. He says, I think. Yeah. James Gates tweets, this is good. Back to the pro-European Union anti-Brexit march yesterday. James tweets, Richie, what I read on the BBC website was that thousands were at the Remain march and hundreds at the pro-Brexit one. I remember thinking, as I read it, that was so obviously biased that hopefully sheeple will see through it. Good man, James. Thanks for that tweet. Thanks for listening. Right. Jeremy Hunt and the Health Secretary was on the Andrew Marr show today. Let's scroll down and get that. Yeah. Because last week, you'll remember this, Theresa May, the Prime Minister, promised that there would be a Brexit dividend for the National Health Service. The government said that a combination of tax rises, economic growth and a Brexit dividend will help to cover the costs of the increased spending necessary for the NHS budget in the next few years. Under the government plans, the budget will increase by £20.5 billion by 2023. Brexit dividend. So Andrew Marr, the presenter, of course, did ask Jeremy Hunt, the Health Secretary, how much exactly, how much Brexit dividend will there be then? Listen to the dodging. The dodging is brilliant.
Well, I think the debate is about the impact on economic growth from Brexit, and that's why there is this debate, because the forecasts are different. What no one is doubting is that a £20 billion increase in the NHS budget is significant. And what Theresa May is saying, and I think this is very important on the basis of the interview that you did with her last Sunday, is something very simple, which is that almost exactly 2 years ago, the British people had a choice. Do they want their tax revenues to be paying for subscriptions to EU membership or on our vital public services like the NHS? And they said they wanted them to go to public services. And it is honouring that decision made by the British people that is why Theresa May said that part of the money for the NHS going forward will be those subscriptions that we won't be having to pay to Brussels.
It's the how much that I'm really asking you to about today. Can I ask about the first year when this new money comes in, which is 2019-2020? In that year, how much Brexit dividend will there be?
Well, I don't think we will have very much Brexit dividend because in the first period after we leave the EU, we'll be paying a divorce bill, which will be substantial.
And the truth shall set you free!
Yeah. You see how the media is the establishment? Why doesn't Andrew Marr say to Jeremy Hunt, Mr. Hunt, respectfully, why the fuck did you agree to pay Brussels a divorce bill in the first place? Right? Who leaves a club and pays £40 billion on the way out the door? Mr. Hunt. And of course, it's a question that Andrew Marr wouldn't dare ask because of where it leads. And the BBC is the British Brexit Corporation. There isn't a news organisation in history that has ever led the cheers for something as much as the BBC leads the cheers for the European Union. Because the BBC, of course, takes money from the European Union. It takes to the tune of 14-15 million pounds a year from the EU. Why in the name of God would Mar let Andrew Hunt away with that? Well, for the moment, Andrew, there won't be much of a Brexit dividend because, of course, we've got the EU divorce bill to pay. See, a good presenter would jump down his throat. Say, what are you giving the EU 40 billion for? What are you doing that for? Just leave. Even if I don't agree with leaving. Even if I personally want to stay, the decision has been made, so why would you give these clowns 40 billion pounds? Right. Right. What else did Andrew Marr hear from Jeremy Hunt? What did Jeremy Hunt say?
But going forward, of course, we will have settled that. And Theresa May was very, very clear that there would be an impact on the taxes we all pay. We will find out what that impact is at the budget. Now, why are we not spelling that out now? Because these things, as you know, are always spelled out at budgets, but we needed to give the NHS 6 months to come up with a plan. And this is a conditional offer by the government. We've said if the NHS comes up with a plan over the next 6 months that meets our requirements in terms of stabilising performance, dealing with some long-standing issues.
You might not give them this money if the plan isn't good enough.
Well, I have to say I'm very confident that the NHS will come up with a good plan, but when we see that plan, they said to us, before we can do that plan, we need to know how much money's on the table. And that's what we've told them.
If Jeremy Corbyn came into this studio and said, I'm going to spend £20 billion extra on something, but I can't tell you how I'm raising it, he would be absolutely crucified. Now, as a government, you are currently doing the same thing. We have £20 billion. Where's it coming from? We don't know. We will tell you in due course.
Only for a period of months.
Only for a few months. We're only lying for a few months. We've bought ourselves a bit of time until we can figure out this, you know, hodgepodge of lies. It's just lies. What about taxes? Because ultimately, when they talk about extra funding for the NHS, all this Brexit dividend stuff is a lie. And you can't get a more pro-leaving the European Union than me. Get out with no deal, I would say, and I would do tomorrow. But they're liars, this government, because they don't want to leave. With this talk of a dividend they know isn't coming, because they're going to continue paying into the European Union, 40 billion for the divorce bill, but later on they're going to say, well, we want to kind of have some access to the single market, so we'll pay them some money on an annual basis. They're liars. Any increase in funding for the NHS will be paid for by Muggins here and your good self, dear listener.
Is the so-called Brexit dividend, is it 5% of the 20 billion or half the 20 billion or almost all the 20 billion? Is it mostly going to come from taxes or not? Those are very, very basic questions.
Andrew, you've been doing this show for a very long time to know that these things are announced in budgets. I've explained to you why we needed to announce what the overall amount for the NHS is, but I think we're missing the really important significance. I just want to say this. No, that's absolutely fine, and I'm not going to give up either, because you have a Conservative Prime Minister who has said that the burden of taxation will go up to fund the NHS. Now, the central debate in British politics over the last 20, 30 years has been framed as a choice. Do you want more money in public services or do you want tax cuts? And what we as Conservatives...
You've always been the tax-cutting party, and now you're not.
No, what we as Conservatives have said is you can actually have both of those if and only if you take tough and difficult decisions on the economy, and those were the decisions taken by George Osborne in 2010, and after that Philip Hammond.
What a load of nonsense. The tough decision, of course, should be to take corporation tax from McDonald's. You know, you talk about bad stuff for children. I was at a party yesterday, I mentioned at the top of the programme, a house party. Didn't somebody take a McDonald's hamburger and leave it in a press or a cupboard for years, and then the burger looked the same, it hadn't lost any of its shape? This shit that is enforced on people. You want to help people out, tax the bejesus out of Starbucks, McDonald's and all these other corporations to pay for the National Health Service. But of course it's going to be you and it's going to be me. Marr tries again in vain.
And to do that, you have to say, honestly, income taxes are going to go up.
Well, we will say, honestly, exactly which taxes are going to go up, but those things, as you know, are always done in a budget.
Interesting you don't rule that out.
Well, we have to allow the Chancellor to do this in budgets. That's what always happens.
National insurance. Gordon Brown suggested a 1% rise in national insurance would do this.
Well, of course, I'm not going to speculate on that now, because what is important now for the NHS is that we have done what they asked, which is we've told them how much money the government will put on the table if we have a good NHS 10-year plan.
Liars. They're just all liars. Liars, damned liars and monumental liars. Jeremy Hunt there on Andrew Marr. I'm going to leave you with this thought, dear listener. On the day that it was reported in the UK Sunday press that Jerry Springer is considering a run for president in 2020, I suppose it would be, wouldn't it? It would be 2020. Imagine that. This is where we're going, you see. In this 24-hour-a-day soap opera that I've talked about so much for the last 3 years, it's absolutely only right and proper. And it's inevitable that we'll have lunatic contests in the future featuring people like Jerry Springer going up against Donald Trump. But anyway, no matter what you think about any issue, no matter who you like and who you don't like, you've got to have a little bit of tolerance for people who think differently to you. You've got to tolerate people. You've got to embrace the fact that other people think about things differently than you do. It's been reported over the weekend by the press in the United States that the White House press secretary, I should say, Sarah Sanders, was basically kicked out of a restaurant in Lexington, Virginia, with her family. The restaurant is called the Red Hen in the Shenandoah Valley. Obviously, Sarah Sanders and her family turned up and she was sitting down, and shortly after that, the owner came over and asked her to leave because apparently one or two people in the kitchen didn't like the fact that she's connected to Donald Trump and his administration and didn't like or don't like what's going on at the moment with respects to immigration policy in the Trump administration. So this woman thought it was okay, Stephanie Wilkinson, to speak to a press secretary who's got nothing to do with policy and in front of her family and in front of other people say to her, you've got to leave because I don't like who you work for and I don't like his policies and his opinions. And that might sound like a nothing story, but it is a something story. This is what identity politics leads to. Disgusting to ask a woman to leave a restaurant because you don't like the political party she's gone with. And of course, all the socialists, the left-leaning fucking idiots are on Twitter saying this is a wonderful thing. And this is what it sets up, of course. And all the alt-right people are going mad when everybody should unite to say to the woman, bad move, bad move. What are you going to do? Are you going to ultimately exclude from your life every single person that disagrees with your political point of view? That is crazy. And you know what? We're starting to see more of it in everyday life, but I blame the so-called independent media. This is where it started. This crazy lunatic asylum, which is a lunatic asylum of its own. The independent media. It's what it's turning people into. It's terrible. Dreadful. Imagine that. How could you say that to anybody? I don't care if her husband or her father's a famous politician. I don't care if she's a multi-millionairess. I don't like what you think and I don't like your boss, so you're going to leave my restaurant. That's a microcosm of the macrocosm. That's what's coming down the line. Unless people shake them fucking selves up and realise that this tyranny affects everybody. Doesn't affect the alt-right or the alt-left or blacks or whites or Muslims or Hispanics. It's everybody. Madness. I'm going to leave you on that note with something a bit more upbeat than my final remarks there. Going to close out with this from the Lighthouse family. Have a fantastic Sunday. Look after yourselves and one another. Thanks to my mate Jean Ann there in the west of Ireland for her counsel. Jeffrey Jackson, the brilliant health journalist, returns to the Richie Allen Show tomorrow after a long absence. Can't wait for him. Enjoy the football today. See you tomorrow. Bye now. Look after yourselves.